Hey everyone, and welcome to the Vegan Man Food channel. This is Cooking with Manny. I of course am Manny, and thank you so much for taking the time to cook with me today. So today we're going to be making a very simple tempeh bacon. So tempeh bacon, what is it? Well, as you can see right here in front of me, this is tempeh. So we're going to be making tempeh into bacon, basically. Now you can use this recipe with a variety of other recipes. Whatever you used to put bacon in, well, now you can put tempeh bacon in. Before we start looking at the ingredients, we want to first say that this recipe is brought to you by Ovation Public Speaking. If you want to get your message out there, you can either use Ovation's virtual consulting services or their online classes to help you improve in your presentations and your speaking skills. Well, with that, let's go ahead and start looking at our ingredients and see what we're going to be using for this recipe. With our tempeh bacon, our very key ingredient is tempeh. So what exactly is tempeh? Well, many people know about tofu. And of course, tofu is a pressed and fermented soybean. Now, tempeh is a little different. So, tempeh is made out of grains. So think about like rice and millet. Sometimes you'll see just a regular tempeh. Sometimes you'll see one that's 3 grain or 5 grain. Those are grains. But it's made in the very similar way that tofu is made. So it's stewed and it's cooked. Think about like oatmeal. So you make an oatmeal and then they let it ferment. And when they let it ferment and it sits, it hardens up into very firm sponge-like consistency. That's why it's so good to make a bacon from it, or you can also do like a vegan sausage. It's very easy to cook and stay together with a nice formation. Sometimes I've even done chicken, like a vegan chicken wing from it. It stays together, it has a very firm consistency. So that's our tempeh. Now how are we going to turn it into bacon? First of all, we're going to use olive oil. Olive oil is going to help add some of the fat to it. If you think about bacon, when you cook bacon, you see oil come from it. So we're going to need oil. What else? We're going to need some things that create the salty flavor. So we're going to use like a soy sauce, but here I'm using aminos. Obviously salt to add that sodium flavor, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika. And I'm going to use a smoked paprika. That will add a little bit of the redness and a little bit of spice to it. Now also we're going to use some liquid smoke, again to add that smoky flavor that bacon has. And we're also going to use an agave. Now, I'm using agave today because I am out of maple syrup. But now, if you really want a great bacon flavor with your tempeh bacon, I highly recommend that you use maple syrup. But you do want a little bit of a sweet element in with it. So I'm going to be using agave today. But definitely use maple syrup if you haven't. So here are our ingredients. Let's go ahead and get into our cooking. We begin with cutting our tempeh. I'm going to cut this in half, and this first half I'm going to cut into small squares. Now I like to cut the tempeh into small squares if I'm going to be using the tempeh basically in a pasta. So think about using it in BLT pasta or pasta carbonara. You cut it into small pieces, almost like small chunks of bacon. Now another way to do it is you'll want to cut it into very small strips, almost mimicking small pieces of bacon. Cutting it thin is very helpful because that will help in making it nice and crispy on each side. Here, notice how thin you can cut it. And remember, because tempeh is so firm, it holds together very nicely. Now let's go ahead and throw the tempeh into a pan. You'll notice that the pan is dry. I don't have any oil in it, but I'm going to cook the tempeh on both sides so it gets nice and crispy. Go ahead and flip it and make sure that you get the tempeh crispy on both sides. While the tempeh is cooking, we can go ahead and make our bacon flavor. We'll start with 2 tablespoons of olive oil, then we'll add 2 tablespoons, give or take, of aminos or soy sauce. Go ahead and add the garlic powder and paprika. Here I'm adding black pepper and of course salt. One of the key ingredients you cannot skip is liquid smoke. And I like to use maple syrup or agave to give it some sweetness. Stir it up nice and thoroughly. Now go back to your tempeh and make sure that it's getting crisp on both sides. Now at this point, add olive oil. The olive oil will give it a nice fattiness, just like actual bacon has. Keep stirring that around and flip the bacon again if needed. This way it will ensure that the bacon gets nice and crispy. You'll notice the crispiness of the tempeh. You'll want to make it crispy before you add the flavor, because if you add the flavor too early, the flavor will burn. At this point, we can add the flavor and give it a nice stir, shake the pan, make sure that it spreads evenly and that it's cooking the flavor into the tempeh. You don't need to let it cook for very long. About 2 or 3 minutes is all it needs for it to start getting crispy and the flavor to start caramelizing. When it starts getting crispy and brown, take the tempeh out of the pan and then you have tempeh bacon. Notice the crispiness and the charring on the edges. That's what gives it very nice flavor. All right, and there we have it, folks. Here is our tempeh bacon. And as you can see, this is a very simple vegan recipe to make, and it's affordable too. When you look at the price of bacon, compare it to the price here of tempeh bacon. Here, we were able to make this entire batch of tempeh bacon for under $3. So it's a really good deal, and it's so versatile. It can be used in so many different recipes. In fact, tell me in the comments below, what recipes have you added this tempeh bacon to? I'm interested to know. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me for this recipe, and join me again for another recipe here on the Vegan Man Food channel.